edition of BnK Sportstalk Radio. I'm Craig Koger.
And I'm Nick Bodkins.
And we're going to get it started with the big news in baseball, the hot topic on the market so far this offseason, Cliff Lee. Everybody's been talking Yankees and Rangers. Out of nowhere, the Phillies get Cliff Lee on a 5-year deal. How big is this for the Phillies?
This is the biggest signing, obviously. Nobody thought the Philadelphia Phillies were going in. It's crazy to me. Here last offseason, they trade him to the Mariners because they get Roy Halladay, and everybody asks, well, why can't they keep both of these guys? And then they make a trade for Roy Oswalt in the middle of the season, last season, and they have Cole Hamels. You think that's a good 1, 2, 3, and now you add Cliff Lee. Well, everybody slide down the spot. Now you have, you have 2 or 3 guys here that. Cole Hamels could be a number 1 on some guys, and he's number 4. Roy Oswalt's number 3, and we've seen him be a number 1, a former Cy Young winner. Obviously, this is where Cliff Lee wanted to join. Money can't buy you everything, obviously, to the Yankees. I think the Yankees have got to be very devastated. This was their guy. Now they missed out on Carl Crawford. They missed out on Cliff Lee. And they threw the bank at these guys, and Cliff Lee took less money. So, obviously, Philadelphia is where he wanted to go. He took less money and turned down the Rangers and the Yankees, who offered him more money and more years. Here he only signs $100 million for 5 years, when the Yankees were offering him 6, 7 years for $130, $140 million. And Cliff Lee takes less money. This is probably the biggest surprise of the offseason, definitely, maybe besides the Jason Worth deal, but I think this even outdoes the Worth deal. And, the Phillies, they know what they're doing. Joe Blanton's maybe your number 5 guy. He talks about trading him, but that 1 through 5 right now, they obviously your National League, maybe World Series favorite right now. Before even the season starts.
Yeah, I agree with you. This so far is the shocker of the off season. It's definitely bigger than the Jason Worth deal. Cliff Lee's been the candy on the market, I guess you would say, throughout this offseason so far. Everybody, you think the Yankees, they're going to throw the money. If he's in it for the money, he's going to New York. If money isn't everything, he's going to Texas. Obviously, there's something in Philadelphia that he liked while he was there. He wanted to go back. Like you said, I think this makes them the World Series favorite as of right now going into the season. We know baseball's a long year, but when you got a pitching staff like the Philadelphia Phillies have right now, 1 through 4, even if they trade Joe Blanton, anybody that fills in that 5th spot, there's no rotation in Major League Baseball that's deeper or better than what the Philadelphia Phillies have right now.
Yeah, most definitely the Phillies. The big question, I think, is why the Philadelphia Phillies. Obviously, he must have liked their. I think, Philadelphia has a lot to offer. You look at their lineup, they're still very good even without Worth. They still have Jimmy Rollins. They have Chase Utley, Howard, Victorino. They have some nice pieces, so they know what they're doing there in Philadelphia. Guys that are coming up are playing well. So Philadelphia, I think, unlike the Rangers, that gives them the best chance to win multiple championships, where, unlike Texas, they're still a young team, and he was that only guy they had to carry that team. And, we saw them struggle there in the World Series against the Giants, where they got outdone because they had a better pitching staff.
And now that Cliff Lee's off the market, the word is that Zach Greinke is the key pitcher on the market now. From what I've heard, the Yankees and the Rangers are really not in the mix for Zach Greinke. The Kansas City Royals want a lot in return for him, and there's not very many teams that can offer that. Do you think Zach Greinke will be on a new team when we start?
I think so. Some team's going to want him. The Yankees are going to try to do something. The Rangers, I think, are going to try to do something. Zach Greinke's the next big guy that, he was the number 2 guy that, teams are going to try to make a trade. But, like you said, the Royals are going to want a lot for him. They're going to want a lot in return for Zach, to get Zach Greinke. And unlike, the Yankees, their farm system's not that great.
All right, moving on from baseball, we're going to get into the NFL. The biggest story of the week in NFL, Brett Favre does not start the first time in an NFL week that Brett Favre did not start a game since 1992, the longest streak ever, 297 games. How historic is this mark?
This is, I think it's the ultimate Iron Man. You look at that position, you look at the NFL, you look at Cal Ripken and what he did in baseball, that's phenomenal. What H.C. Green did in basketball, but football's different. It takes a more toll on your body. He played the position where you touch that ball more and more every time. We look at teams. Brett Favre, more quarterbacks. The Bears put out more quarterbacks than any team. There's been 200 some odd players come through the NFL. Brett Favre has started every game. It's remarkable. Finally he was put down yesterday, or I wouldn't say put down, but he was knocked out. And I don't think Brett Favre's going to finish this season. It was he had a good run. I think he wishes maybe last year was it. Is Peyton Manning the next guy? Do you think he's going to take be able to beat Brett Favre's streak?
You know what? Peyton Manning has a very realistic chance to get to Brett Favre's mark, but I just don't think it's going to happen. Like you said, the quarterback position, you touch that ball every time, every play that your offense takes, and when you hike that ball, everybody on the defensive line is coming for you. That's a position where you take some shots. They'll tackle you. You get your ankles hurt. It's a position that defensive players are constantly taking out quarterbacks. I think Peyton Manning has the talent that in 5 or 6 years he's definitely still going to be a starting quarterback. But it's just very hard at that position, at the quarterback position, to stay healthy for that long and start that many games.
Yeah. And the question is, even if Peyton Manning's going to play that many years, here he's already, over 10 years, and that's 5 or more years. That's 15, 16 more years we're talking about Peyton Manning playing the league. That's a long time. Brett Favre is one of those few rare guys we've seen him play, day in and day out. I think, to me, he's one of the toughest guys we've ever seen to come along. He's taken some shots along the way. We've seen, after his dad died, what he did on Monday night. One of the more remarkable performances we've ever seen on a football field. And, I tip my hat off to Brett Favre. He's my favorite player as a childhood. I respected him, even though he went to Minnesota. I like Brett Favre. This was, I tip my hat to him. It's a tough streak. And, unfortunately, it was a bad way for him to go out.
Yeah, I agree with you. Everybody would have liked to see Brett Favre finish off the season. Play the full 16 games, but it's not working out right now. If Brett Favre is healthy, I just think it's best for him to not worry about playing. The Minnesota Vikings are out of the playoff race, and right now they know Brett Favre is not their quarterback next year, so the Vikings have something to figure out. They need to figure out if this guy Favres Jackson is going to be the quarterback for the future, or if they need to go out and get a quarterback. And I think yesterday's game and then last 3 games that the Minnesota Vikings have will give them a little more chance to see how Favres Jackson works.
Yeah, speaking of that game, we saw the Giants run all over Minnesota in Detroit due to the Metrodome falling down. Favres Jackson didn't play that well. What are your thoughts? He took a beating.
Well, we know the New York Giants get after the quarterback. Like I said, that's one thing we know. Anytime the New York Giants are getting on the football field, Favres Jackson took a couple shots. He left the game twice. Came back in. If this guy's going to be the future of this football team and wants to be a starter in the NFL week in week out, he can't get injured. He's got to stay healthy. He's got to be tough. He's got to stay in the pocket and take some shots and be able to get up and keep on playing. From what I've saw last week compared to last night, it was 2 totally different offenses with Favres Jackson taking the snaps. They looked good last week. This week, not so good. They were playing the Giants, but we got 3 more weeks to figure it out. Personally, I think the Vikings will be looking for a quarterback.
Hey, Favres Jackson led them to the playoffs a couple years ago before they got Brett Favre. He's a decent quarterback, but I think one thing we saw last night is that offensive line's been not very good, and that defense has been struggling all year, and they haven't played very well. Not like the defense they were last year. I mean, Ahmad Bradshaw and Brandon Jacobs just ran right over that team, and the Giants beat down the Vikings.
And moving on to the other Monday night game, Baltimore Ravens beat the Texans in overtime. The first half was dominated by the Ravens. The Houston Texans came out in the second half, played great, like they seem to do all year, and at the end they come short like they seem to do all year. What's your take on this game?
First the Ravens' defense is what I got out of this. The Texans put it on them in the second half. And once again, we watch this second half. This team drive down the Ravens a game-tying touchdown or game-winning touchdown. We saw it a couple weeks ago in Atlanta. The Ravens' defense is very suspect in my mind. They haven't, even a week before that, the Steelers, we saw them score on a late drive, where in the years past this Ravens defense has been able to stop folks, hold people to field goals, and they haven't been able to do that. And I think that's going to be key going forward and maybe into the playoffs, that this Ravens defense has kind of let that team down a couple times.
Yeah, I agree with you. This Ravens defense, when the Monday night game was starting last night, and I was listening to Ray Lewis's pep talk, he said, "This is our game. We play it the full 60 minutes." Well, the first half of football, the way the defense looked was a lot better than the way it looked in the second half. They did look tired. Houston's got a lot of quick guys on their offense. Arian Foster as the running back, and it looks like as the game went on, the Ravens' defense just looked a little bit slower. They looked a step behind, and that's how they've looked the last couple weeks, and that's definitely a problem that they got to solve if they want to go deep in the playoffs. Their offense looked a lot better, and normally we don't say this, but right now the defense is what I'm worrying about with Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah, that's true. And also, I think the Ravens, the Texas defense stepped it up a little bit in the second half. The Ravens, they went on a couple 3-and-outs there. Is Andre Nick Johnson just not a beast? I mean, it seemed like you throw it to that guy, he's going to catch it. He made a nice one-hand grab, made the nice game-tying touchdown before the 2-point conversion. I mean, this guy, he's uncoverable. I think he's probably the best receiver in the NFL right now. And the Texans got something going with him, Matt Schaub, Arian Foster. They got a nice team. They just struggled here, closing out some games. They've lost some really tough games.
Yeah, like I said yesterday, the Houston Texans are just a few big plays away from being a playoff team. They lost the game in Jacksonville on the Hail Mary. They've lost a couple of these games where they've been behind early. They come back and lose it at the end of the fourth quarter. They're tough losses. The team's going in the right direction. Next year, I think, will be better for Houston.
All right, switching up to a little NBA, the Miami Heat, the team I've dogged earlier this year. And they're on 9 straight. They've won each game by 10 points or more. What are your thoughts here on the Heat?
You know what? I'm still not completely sold on the Miami Heat. They've won 9 straight. We've seen other teams in the NBA on longer winning streaks than that so far. And the Heat, during their win streak, there's 2 or 3 teams that I'm going to say were good competitors that they beat in the Hornets, the Jazz, and the Hawks. Other than that, all the teams that they've beat on this win streak are below 500, and I'm not going to be sold on the Heat until they start beating a lot of these good teams in the East and the West. They got a trip coming up. They're taking on some Western Conference teams. They play the Mavericks, the Suns, and the Lakers. I think they lose 2 out of those 3 games. It'll be fun to watch, but I'm not sold on the Miami Heat yet.
Yeah, I'm not sold on them quite either. I mean, LeBron James and Dwayne Wade, and they seem to like they're figuring it out, but at the same time, sometimes they're not. They're playing better when they're not on the court together. Looking at it, like you said, the teams they haven't really beat a good quality team. The Jazz, they beat them, and the Hornets, but those aren't even the elite teams. The Jazz I would put a little bit below the elite teams. They do play the Lakers on Christmas Day. A game I expect the Lakers to win, and it'll be a big game. And we'll see how good the Heat are when they play an elite team like the Lakers Christmas Day. I'm not quite buying into them yet, but this is a nice run to maybe try to get this team headed in the right direction.
Yeah, and the thing I saw on during this win streak, the big 3 of Miami are combined for averaging 75 points a game, which still leads me to believe that if one of these guys goes down and somebody gets hurt, there's nobody on this basketball team that can step up and keep this team as a championship caliber team.
Yeah, they're not a very deep team. We've said that over and over again. All right, that'll conclude our BnK Sports Talk show today. Thanks for tuning in, sports fan. I'm Nick Bodkins.
And I'm Craig Koger. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook at BnK Sports Talk, or email any comments and questions to our email at bnksportstalk@hotmail.com.